The Centre for Risk Analysis has developed a new set of strategic intelligence briefings which outline various scenarios for the future development of South Africa. These are presented by Dr. Frans Cronje, the director of the CRA, who joins us to discuss. Frans, what are the key elements of this new scenarios presentation which you're presenting to clients?
We've been doing it for many years, and it's probably our most popular product. And what happens is the members of the team get together and we draw out the major trends for South Africa and the world from an economic, a social, a policy, and a political perspective that will shape the climate that our clients operate in through the short, medium, and into the longer term. And the purpose behind the briefing is that in short order, and that's critical. There was a time when this business was about writing reports and sending them to clients, and clients would read them and ingest them. A lot of that's changed. And what happens in a briefing session, and sometimes as short as 45 minutes, is we take the client through the strategic environment they're in. And the promise behind it, our objective, is that if you sit through those briefings, nothing is going to happen from a political or a policy or a markets or a global risk perspective that takes you by surprise. And the briefing we've put together now, we've been working on, it takes a couple of weeks at the beginning of the year to build it. I think it's the best one we've ever done. It's got some astonishing South African information. It's got the latest polling data on the country. It points very clearly towards the political future. It is rock solid on what to expect from the economy in terms of growth and jobs and markets and currencies, etc. And on the world and the rest of the world, it draws out some absolutely amazing trends that I think point very strongly to what you can expect from the Western world, what you can expect from China right through the next decade.
All right, Frans. Well, one of the key pillars of our scenarios briefings is the scenarios methodology itself. Could you explain how it is that we at the center go about building the various scenario sets that we present to clients?
Yeah, the briefing concludes with scenarios, and scenarios are narratives of how the world that you operate in, your strategic environment, how that environment is going to change through the short, the medium, and the longer term. Now, there are two broad approaches to that kind of work. One is a single point forecast. That is to take the client to a single point in future space and time and to tell the client that this will happen. And we're such good analysts, we're so clever, that we're confident that that is the case. Track record in the global forecasting world, the strategic risk world of that kind of approach is very poor. And the reason is not that there's a problem with data or information or that the analysts can't interpret the stuff. The reason we understand very well rests in complex systems theory, that small changes in the present conditions of complex systems bring about such enormous shifts in their future circumstances that long-term strategic forecasting, single point forecasting, does not work, cannot work. The maths behind it establishes that. It simply exposes clients to incredible levels of risk. Instead, we follow an approach that's really gained a lot of credence, started in the US military in the 1950s, grew through the famous experiences of the Shell strategic planning team in the 1960s and the 1970s. Clem Sunter in South Africa became one of the great proponents of it. And that is before we start narrowing down the future, we indicate to a client what might happen if different combinations of major trends come together. And we urge the client to, in the longer term, wind tunnel themselves and develop corporate strategy, or if you're a high net worth individual or even just an ordinary family, develop your own personal strategy around what would happen to you if you flew your future through one of the wind tunnels we'll sketch for you. Once you've done that, our advice is develop proto strategy in every case where you got wiped out by unanticipated future events. Once you've done that, you're pretty robust. And after that, we'll work with the client to get down to what we think is the most probable future, the future the client should be adopting strategy for. But they should never do that to the extent of dismissing any of the other wind tunnels in the broader scenario set, so that should our dashboards show the client that the strategic environment is moving away from what we thought was most probable, the client already knows what they've got to do. Strategy is already worked out. They don't have to go back to the drawing board. They can simply adopt it. And what that does is that firms, individuals, families that shift their thinking away from single point forecasting towards our strategic risk approach can actually begin to use risk and unanticipated events as a strategic asset, given that they can be very certain that the bulk of the industry they operate in, or the bulk of analysts who advise them, or the bulk of whatever the case is, will be caught completely by surprise when events shift fundamentally. They'll have to go back to the drawing board. They'll have to start the analysis again. They'll have to build strategy from scratch. Our client has already been through that process. They can simply implement and therefore use global shocks and domestic shocks to take leads over their competitors. And that's very much the kind of thinking, the kind of culture that we try to instill within our client base through our strategic intelligence briefings.
So Frans, how would our existing clients and also individuals and institutions that aren't already clients of the CRA, how could they go about organizing one of these briefings for their own strategy teams, for their own executive committees or boards?
It's easy, David. If you're an existing corporate client, a briefing service is already in your subscription package. Get in touch with our staff. We'll set up a session for you, your board, your exco, your senior clients. It's that straightforward. If you're an individual type user, a subscriber of the CRA, we will in the coming weeks send you an invitation to the mass webinars we hold around these briefings, and we'll brief you accordingly. If you're not an individual user, and if you're not an existing premium user, you can purchase a once-off briefing from us. Get hold of us on our website, give us a shout. We'll explain the fees and the processes for you. Those are the three ways to access the briefing. It's never made public beyond its paywall.
Well, thanks very much, Frans. And one way you can access CRA information and briefings such as the one that we've discussed today is through our 30-day free trial. There's a link in the description below where you can access all of our content via that route. My name is David Ansara. Please remember to subscribe to this channel for our daily updates from the CRA and the rest of the CRA team. And until next time, take care.